One of the most prolific communicators of our day, Dr. Dharius Daniels, is on a mission to help as many people as possible become their best selves while doing their best work. Speaker, coach, and certified emotional intelligence specialist, Dharius specializes in helping others self-optimize without self-destructing. With over 20 years of leadership experience, Dharius understands that the right information can cause a comprehensive revolution. Dr. Dharius also emerged in the mentoring and coaching arena with the release of the Daniels Den Mentoring and Coaching Program, which serves thousands of members. It is a pleasure to welcome Dharius to the show. Dharius, what a pleasure it is to have you on the show. I was introduced to your platform about 6 weeks ago, and I dove deep. You are inspiring hundreds of thousands of people, and you have such a positive spin on it for people to get out of their own way and really start to change their life. So thank you for spending some time here, because I know your time is so valuable. And I'm excited to get to know you a little bit more personally.
Well, listen, I think I'm probably more excited to be here and just to have this conversation with you. I was telling you offline just how I love your platform and love how you're helping and practically serving people, man, and really helping them experience, I think, some deep transformations in some really important areas. So I'm honored to be here.
Hey, I think we all have our own path, and I thank you for that. Thank
Yeah.
you. So let's talk about how it all started for you. You were brought up in a small town, and you talk about that a lot. So I want to know, I want to take my audience back to the beginning of your life. What was it like growing up in a small town, and how did that shape your perspective and purpose?
Okay, so here's the first thing. I got to tell people how small the town is,
Okay.
because when some people hear small town, I don't know if they know how small this town is I grew up in. All right. So it's called, the name of the town is Michael, Mississippi. There's a long story about that, but it's like named after a cow that got loose in the town named Michael. And it was something's going crazy with the cow. That's literally the story. I don't know if that's true or not. But anyway, population 500 people, 500 something people. There was one full time police officer, one part time police officer who drove my school bus during the day, and he took the night shift as the police officer. There was one doctor named Dr. Henson, one nurse who worked at the clinic, one pharmacist, one grocery store, no stoplights. And my high school graduating class was 33 people.
Wow.
Yes, that's how small it was.
I mean, and look at you now, like speaking to hundreds of thousands of people. How do you go from a graduating class of 33 to feeling comfortable doing that? And like, how did this process start for you?
Yeah, here's one of the great things that I think about my experience growing up in a town like that. There wasn't a lot of extracurricular anything to do, right? There's no arcade, there's no skating rink, there's none of the things that maybe some other spaces in the country would have had. We just didn't have that. So this is what we did. We did people.
Yeah.
We did people. That's the only thing that you could do. And so we laughed and we got together and everybody knew everyone and everyone supported everyone. And so I think what that upbringing did for me is it shaped in me this value for just people. Because really, in a small town like that, that's all you have. And so I think it's kind of that was my passion for people was kind of, I think, stirred in me during that time period in my life. And I think it's just translated over into like, man, I just valued people so much. Let me spend my life adding value to as many people as I can. And so I really think it was really a significant part of my journey. I don't feel like it was a disadvantage. I feel like it was an advantage, like my path was necessary for my purpose.
Oh, definitely. I mean, looking around today with social media and people trying to get distracted and not focus on people, like, oh, you have such a gift having that just upbringing and being able to get good at people, because I think when people feel insecure, unsure, or they have, things about them, or they feel, whether it's like in a large group, overwhelmed or anxious, they avoid people. And it's that connection, right? That tribe and how we support our community and we really connect with one another that like makes life worth living. And you learned that at such a young age and you're sharing it with your huge community. So can we talk about like how you're helping people get good at emotional intelligence and their community? Like, I guess we should start at the beginning. What is emotional intelligence?
Yeah. So I think one of the things, well, yeah. So let me answer the question first, because I'll start telling stories.
Yeah, tell the stories. That's the good stuff.
So let me tell a quick story just in terms of like my interest in it and where it came from. So I had this experience in 2014, and I just really started talking about this, I think, over the past couple of years.
Mhm.
Probably during the pandemic is like when I first went public with this. So
Mhm.
in 2014, I'm writing a book, right? I got a book deadline. I'm behind on that. I'm finishing doctoral work. So I got a deadline for my final project. I'm behind on that. I'm traveling and speaking. It's just like the perfect storm. And I woke up one morning. It was like I couldn't gather my thoughts. It was difficult for me to catch my breath. I was like shaking. And I later found out I had what was called, I mean, it was an anxiety attack.
Yeah.
And no history with any anxiety prior to that. And it was really just a combination of just like mismanagement of my schedule, overcommitment, overwhelm, etc., and the ignoring of what was going on in me emotionally. Like I feel like here's one saying, like our emotions shouldn't be dictators, but they are indicators, right? They shouldn't, we should do everything that we feel, because everything that we feel isn't necessarily in our best interest. Yet at the same time, it's like the equivalent of a check engine light on a car. Like when I'm feeling something, I don't need to ignore that. I need to dig deeper to explore and to kind of uncover and excavate what's underneath this, and what are my feelings trying to tell me about what's going on with me right now, you know? And so long story short, when I had that experience, I was like, okay, things are going well professionally. I'm not really struggling. Like they're going so well professionally. I think I'm doing too much. Things aren't, they weren't going bad necessarily relationally. I wasn't in trouble financially. I felt good spiritually. But what was neglected was where I was emotionally. And I didn't realize at that point in my life that all of life is integrated. I didn't know. I just felt like you can compartmentalize things. I didn't know how you are emotionally affects how you are relationally, and how you are relationally affects how you are emotionally. So I didn't know that life was integrated that way. And so when that happened, I went on a journey with a coach and a therapist to just try to figure out what's going on practically with me, with my life and my schedule, but what is also going on with me internally. And that's kind of what led to me beginning to do some deep dives in emotional intelligence, getting helped, and then making a decision like, okay, now I want to use part of my life to do for others. This coach is just done for me in terms of helping me kind of regulate that ability in your life and regulate that area of my life. And so basically, long story short, there are a number of different definitions to emotional intelligence. This is the way I like to describe it. It's really four quadrants. It's self-awareness, it's self-management, then it's social awareness, and then relationship management. How I am in those four areas really dictates how emotionally intelligent I am. Am I aware of what's going on in me emotionally? That's self-awareness. Then self-management is, do I have the strategies and the practices and the tactics to manage myself emotionally in a way where it doesn't drive me to behavior that hurts me or hurts others? Then there's social awareness, which is, do I have the ability now to see, in a sense, like what's going on emotionally with other people? You know, it's like, okay, am I talking to people? Am I shutting down? Are they shutting down? Are they triggered? And then the ability to manage those relationships accordingly. And so, in a nutshell, that's kind of emotional intelligence. And I saw it's so key, not necessarily, not just to a person's standard of living, but it's really key in terms of a person's quality of life. Because you can have a high standard of living and a low quality of life.
Definitely. So looking back on 2014 and taking those four pillars of social or personal awareness, like
Yeah.
self-awareness and self-management, when you look back on 2014 and working with that coach, for you, what was that like personal awareness, self-awareness? What did you uncover? And how did you begin to manage what was maybe something you weren't doing right for yourself?
Oh my God. You listen, you go deep in your interviews. I see.
Well,
No,
I just feel like examples really help us. Like this is something that we're all kind of probably walking around feeling, and like over people feel anxiety and overwhelm that they haven't ever felt before after the pandemic and through the last couple of years with all like everything that's happening socially and like the layer the pandemic, layer like injustices, layer, I mean, like it gives me full body chills. Like people need these tools. So I feel like if you can tell your story, we can all learn from it and say, I'm sure, see, maybe have a better idea of like what's happening with us and have better self-awareness.
no, 100%. I love it. Incredible, incredible question. So, in terms of awareness, I discovered a few things. And this is tough. You kind of have like, you got to have, we talk about having thick skin when it comes to others, what others have to say. It takes thick skin to be able to do some investigation with yourself too, right? And to see some things that you might need to address to improve your life and improve others. And here are a few things that I saw in terms of awarenesses that I came to. One was this, um, performance orientation. And what do I mean by that? It is a sense of worth that was attached to how much I was accomplishing. I was completely blind to that. I had no idea. And that kind of comes from what's called not appreciation deficits, but it comes from affirmation deficits, where appreciation is typically something that you receive for something that you do. Whereas affirmation is more of an affirming of who you actually are. And if a person hasn't necessarily gotten that for one reason or another, and typically they only get appreciation through what they do, they become oriented toward performing. So I saw that with me, and I had no clue. I had no clue, because here's the thing. I feel like even in culture, right? We kind of celebrate it for what we do. It's like, it's grind culture. It's like, I'll sleep when I die, or, things of that nature. It's like a virtue almost, or perceived to be perceived to be a virtue in culture, when like, really, man, this is a vice. And for me, it was literally self-destructive.
Right.
And, so that's one of the things I saw. I saw some people pleasing in there. I hated disappointing people. So that's what was driving my overcommitment. I was giving way too many yeses because I didn't want to disappoint people with no's. I saw some perfectionism in there. So those were some things that my coach kind of helped me see. And then we had to come up with a plan and a strategy for, okay, now what are we going to do about this? How are we going to manage this, and how are we going to try to fix some of it?
Ooh, let's get to the tools, because I mean, I'm sure people listening, I tend to overcommit and get excited, especially when people ask me in person, hey, you want to do this? And I'm like, yeah. The affirmation piece is really, I think, so critical too, because you're right. We're in this hustle culture where people become an entrepreneur and then they get really excited about the things they're creating and producing and everything. I mean, it goes away in a day. It's like you post it one day, you're sharing something profound, and then that was yesterday. So you
Yeah.
got to keep going. Like we're putting ourselves in our own little rat race. Like, how do we start affirming who we are and not what we do?
Yeah. Can I share something? This is so random. I share random things, but it's related to the topic, right? So I'm working on this presentation, this talk. Like, my dad sent me this text message of this box filled with comic books. So my dad still lives in Kilmichael, Mississippi. So he sent me this text message. He took a picture of a box filled with comic books. He's like, hey, all of your old comic books are here. And I'm looking at all of the books, and I'm like, I know there's people listening like, what's a comic book? Yo, just Google it. I know.
Yeah, I know what a comic book is.
It might be before some people's time, but the point that I'm making is, like, one of my favorite characters was like Spider-Man. So I'm getting ready to do this event for men, right? And I'm going to be talking to men about, I'm calling it Marvel Men, and like some of the similarities and parallels between some characters that are part of the Marvel family and our lives. And one of them is like a Spider-Man. And so this is like one of the points I'm pulling from Spider-Man that I think it applies to everybody, but specifically, man, I said, I want someone to love me like Aunt B.
All right.
The world loves Spider-Man, right? But Aunt B loved Peter Parker.
Yeah.
And the love that the world had for Spider-Man was based on what he did primarily. The love that Aunt B had for Peter Parker was based on who he was.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that kind of speaks to that that affirmation that we were just talking about. Like, she loved him, the quirky him, the nerdy him, the socially awkward him. She loved him. And I think, man, I think it's just so important that as a culture and as a human family, we are more intentional about expressing affirmation and not just appreciation. And I know people may think, you're supposed to get that from the Aunt B's in your life. Well, this is what I've learned. I've learned that everybody doesn't have them. Everybody doesn't have whatever Aunt B means. It could be extended family. It could be nuclear family. Like, everyone doesn't have that. And so when we kind of, as a human family, recognize the importance of that, I think we can do more in terms of like affirming people. And I'm gonna tell you now, like, the compliments that register more deeply with me now are not compliments about what I do, but compliments about maybe who I am and how that is adding value to people. So this affirmation piece, I think, is underemphasized. It's about love me like Aunt B.
It's really nice, because I think, and I think about my best friends and the people that I care the most for. It really is energetically how they show up in my life. Like the ones that walk in your house and are like a little bit loud and they're laughing and they just are like, this is already fun because you're here. Kind of, they bring that like full heart of love into your house. And when you think about it, like, it's like none of this, I mean, you write books and you speak on stages, but it's almost like those moments where if someone were to tell me that about, like, I can think of a few friends, and I guess, Ashling, if you're listening, I'm talking about you, but like, there are certain people that you're just like, wow, like they have a presence that changes the dynamic of the entire situation. And what a like an amazing gift that they're giving to that friend group or that party or that community, to feel joyful, to feel love. It's like, it's to feel grateful. Like, they just bring that whole vibe. And like, I think that would be the best compliment to ever get.
Yeah, 100%.
You give me those vibes, Dharius. You give me those vibes. We've had a lot of practice. Not all of us has had as much practice as you, but that's good stuff. So how do we self-affirm? Like, if we don't have those people around us, are there tools that you suggest people use to self-affirm?
100%. 100%. Now, I know this is different people. There are different streams of thought about this, and I respect that. But for me, this is what I know. This is just data, right? This is just me being intellectually objective. The person that talks to you the most is you. That's just data, right? So I'm not talking about philosophy here. I'm not talking about ideology. It's just a fact. The person that talks to you the most is you. So you're the person that talks to you the most. And as a result of that, you're the most important person that talks to you, because you're going to hear you talking to you or about you more frequently than anyone else. And I think there is just a human tendency to go negative. It is. Of course, there are some anomalies and exceptions. There's a generalization. But generally speaking, there's a tendency to go negative in terms of the areas of our life we need to improve, the areas of our character that we want to evolve, the areas of our skill we want to sharpen. And I'm not saying we shouldn't give attention to that, but I feel like there's a difference between giving attention to that and being obsessed with that. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to be intentional. So there's like this psychological gravitational pull toward the negative and what I need to be improved, what needs to be improved. So I think that it takes intentional effort to say, what I'm going to do is, and the brain knows when I'm lying to me, so I'm not going to lie, right, to myself. But what I am going to do is I'm going to be intentional about being objective. And I'm going to explore those things about me that I do feel like are valuable. and that I do see worth in, and I'm going to articulate that to myself. So I'm really big into in the affirmations. And when I say that, not because necessarily because I believe they create something externally or cosmically or existentially, but what they do for you and what they do for your subconscious and what they do for your mind and what they do for your heart. So I think it takes intentionality. And I've got a few of them that I wake up with, and I say to myself every morning, like one of them is, okay, I'm a man of excellence. And I don't feel like I was excellent today. I was running behind on some stuff but I wake up every morning. It's going to be one of the things that I say. I say, I have what do I say? Oh yeah, I got a 10% marriage. And that is like, yeah, I want a 1% marriage. I say, I got a 1% marriage. I got a 10% body. These are things that I am saying to me, even if I haven't arrived yet. I'm saying that to me because that helps me on the journey.
It's training, right? It's training and practice for your brain when it wants to go negative to find a space, create a space to be positive.
Yeah.
I love it. So getting to people pleasing, because this is something I think we all want to make other people happy, but at the expense of ourselves is a problem. How do you get better? How do you manage that? How do you get better at saying no so you can say yes to yourself?
Oh man. Yeah, I'm going to tell you, that was and probably is the hardest one for me. The performance orientation, the desire for it is more difficult to deal with, but practically that's a lot easier to fix because that's really a scheduling issue. It really is. So with that, my coach and I, we just decided, hey, Dharius, let's make decisions about your schedule before you have to make decisions about your schedule. So we're going to make decisions about your schedule in your time of strength before you have to make decisions about your schedule in your time of weakness. So when people are asking you, like you just mentioned earlier, like spontaneously, like, hey, will you do this? You're like, yeah. And then when it comes time to do it, you're like, I don't want to do this. Like, why did I say I was going to do this? Exactly. Yeah. So that was easier. The people pleasing required a little more emotional work and getting to the root because I feel like that's a symptomatic emotion, right? And so it's what is underneath that's driving your need and your desire to not disappoint people, which is at the core, is what people pleasing is all about, it's to not disappoint people. But here's the thing. People pleasing is seen as selfless when it's actually selfish, because you're not really trying to please other people. You're actually pleasing yourself and you're using other people to do it. So not disappointing them makes you feel good about you. And once I saw that, I was like, okay, I am not actually helping them or helping me by doing this. And then we made some very similar decisions about, okay, what do you say yes to? What do you say no to? Therefore, when it's time to say yes and no, you've already kind of made those decisions.
Oh, you just flip that on its head. Of course, I would think people pleasing is selfless, but it makes perfect sense. You're like pleasing yourself by doing it.
Yeah.
So what are some practical decisions you made about your schedule, and how do you bucket what you're going to do versus what you're not going to do? And is it seasonal, like in a specific time of the year, or like, let's get into it, because this is something that can really free up people's time to do the things that they need to do for themselves to feel their best.
100%. So I'm going to get really practical here in terms of what my coach and I walked through. So the first thing that he had me do is, like, in dealing with even with the performance orientation and people pleasing, the first exercise we did was, we're going to do a core value exercise. And that, for me, I came up with, I like alliteration because it helps me remember. And that is like, in this season of your life. And what's weird is they change based on the season of life that I was in. So in this season of your life, in order of importance, what are the things that matter the most to you right now? Like, list that out. And so it was my faith, and it was my family, and it was my fitness, and it was my finance, and it was my friends, and it was my fun. So anyway, I kind of listed that out. And it's like, he's like, yo, okay, that's great. You got that on paper. Now, he says, this is a proclaimed value now. That's all it is. You proclaim that this is your value. It's not an actual priority until you schedule it. And so you can really have values that are not priorities, right? And so he's like, okay, let's not, here's the word that at least the language I came up with to help me. Cause I'm kind of like a free flowing guy. You know what I mean? It's just like, yeah, let's just like, what do you want to do today? It's like, let's whatever we want, you know, that like, that's
You're like, don't schedule me. I want to flow.
Yeah, I want to flow. But here's the point. So I knew regimentation wouldn't work for me. Yeah. It'll just, man, it just sucked the life out of me. So I said, hey, I can't do a regiment, but let's do a rhythm.
Nice.
Let's do a rhythm. Let's not say every day at 8, like every day you in the morning, you're getting up at 5 o'clock. It's like, no, I like that, but it's a rhythm. Let's give a rhythm, you know, it's like, let's kind of block time out. So anyway, that's kind of what we did. It's like, okay, as it relates to your faith, as it relates to your family, as it relates to what do you feel like is a good rhythm? What are we going to do daily? And we kind of pick those things. What do you feel like you can kind of do weekly? It's like, then we pick those things. Okay, what do you feel like you kind of want to do monthly? And we pick those things. So an example of that would be, there are going to be some things as relates to my faith and my fitness I'm going to do every day, right? Or most days. Then when it comes to my wife, there are going to be certain things I do every day. But then there are going to be other things like a date night that I'm going to do weekly. When it comes to my friends, there might not be things I can do every day or every week. But in terms of rhythm, at least monthly, there are certain things that I'm going to do. So that's like literally what we did first. And we kind of plug that in and say, hey, okay, now here's the thing. When you're making decisions, Dharius, you've got to make sure that you got enough integrity not to violate your priorities, because these are the things that matter the most to you. And so when it came now to me doing outside stuff or accepting other responsibilities, it was like, can I do this in a way that doesn't violate the rhythm that I've established for my life? And if the answer to that is yes, then it doesn't mean it gets done. It means it gets considered. If the answer to that is no, it's not even considered. And so I had to go extreme with that for a season, because if not, I'd always be making excuses and adjustments or whatever. And frankly, you know, and I know this isn't everybody's life, but I have an assistant, obviously, in that helped me because I had to be honest with her. I was like, yo, you got to help me, protect me from me. So like, I give you permission to push back on me. I give you permission to remind me of what some of these priorities are. And I gave my coach that permission to ask me the hard questions when we had our coaching sessions every other week.
Again, it's back to training. Like, you need a gatekeeper on your email and the requests. You need a coach to hold you accountable. I think that's one of the most successful things I see when I look at the most successful people that I work with, CEOs, actors, you name it, it's like, I think everyone thinks they just do it on their own and they're so great because they're so driven and but there's so much support system there that people don't see, that the minute they speak it aloud and take that from their heart, out of their mouth, out of their brain, into the atmosphere, it's like they solidify it for their community, the people around them. And those people really show up to hold them accountable because they have no emotion in it. There's no skin in the game for them. They're like, hey, my job is to hold you accountable here. My job is to manage your schedule, your calendar. And like, you told me this was important, so let's keep it here. Like, we can't I think, you know, I feel bad when people think, oh, I'm such a failure, I can't do this. And so thank you for sharing that very candidly, because people might look at you and go, oh, he had a coach once and now he's really great at prioritizing all his core values, you know, but just being honest about it and I think that's, you know, saying where you need help and asking for it is so critical in attaining our goals.
Yeah. And you know, something else that I do, and I want people to hear this too. Like, something else that I do is at the end of the week, I've got like just a moment where I kind of score myself on how I feel like I did that week. And some weeks are like great. And then there are other weeks it's like, We're going to do better next week.
You're like, why did I say yes to all this? But
Yeah. So it's a
there's
journey.
it's something about that, like, though, that I think is really interesting, because again, it goes back to like human nature, right? You said you had to be really strong and like hard on yourself for a season to be good at it. Otherwise you'd make excuses. And it's sort of like being in the nutrition space and like diet culture and all that. It, sometimes it takes like cleaning up the way that we're eating or being a little stricter with ourselves so that it makes it easier on the back end to have balance. But balance, I mean, I think it's like a little bit of a fallacy. Even like when I think about blood sugar, it's like your blood sugar, that's what I love and talk about. Your blood sugar goes up, insulin brings it down. It's never perfect. It's never flatlined. And we expect ourselves to be that way. Like the balance in our body is a rhythm, like it's homeostasis. It's that we feel ourselves going out of balance a little bit too much and we pull ourselves back. And it's just like tightening that rhythm and getting better at it, not being perfect, not stopping it, not flatlining anything, but really, and that scoring system is doing that. It's kind of like this check-in point of like, you're not letting it go so far that you've overcommitted to all these things and you just spent 6 weeks saying yes to things that aren't your priority. You're checking in with yourself at the end of the week and going like, how was that? Did I work out? Did I prioritize my wife? Did I prioritize my faith? How was, how was I showing up? And am I in alignment? Because that's when I think people feel the worst or out of balance. It's not that they're not being quote perfect. It's like, how far off the midline did I get?
Wow. Yeah, wow. Hey, I'm about to date myself again. um, so on the playgrounds at school, Kilmichael, Mississippi, we had the seesaw, right? Yeah. And so this is one of the things about life. As you were talking, I'm thinking about the seesaw, and that's like, yeah, you never really, once it's up in the air, like you never really stay at like this equal place. It's always a little too high, a little too low, and these constant adjustments that you're making. Yeah, no, that's a great
Constant movement, right? It's
yeah.
just, well, you've given, I mean, already I'm like, I want to go look at my calendar. I think that's something that people, I'm sure listening, want to do too, is like, look at their calendar, see where they need to block. And I'm curious, after you worked with your coach to do this, do you have specific block times where you are saying, where it is a time to say yes? And I'm sure you get so many requests for interviews like this, to come speak at things, to, mentor someone. Like, what's on your yes list and when do you block time to do that? Is it blocked? I know you have a rhythm, but like, are there specific times when you're saying yes?
That's a great question. And so the answer to that is yes. So it means, and so I'm gonna get like very specific here. So let's just say something like, let's say something like this, like a podcast, right? That, of course, there are exceptions, but generally speaking, there's a day of the week and a certain time window within that day, which is this day of the week that we're recording this, and within and a certain time window that I can do that in. And there are a few reasons for it. One is, let me talk about this. All right, I'm gonna do this real quick. Okay.
No, real quick. This is fun. I'm like, I'm excited not excited for this to be over, but I'm, when I get tools like this that seem so practical, because I'm not a super regimented person. I like light structure. Like I like a rhythm that you're talking about. I'm going to go write down my core values and look at my calendar for like 35 minutes. So give me more good stuff, because I'll definitely use it.
So I did this thing, right? And I don't do a lot of one-on-ones now, but when I do, it's one of the things, and even in some of my group coaching, I help people with something called energy zones, right? And that is, let's say if we're blocking out, I'm just going to say hypothetically 4-hour blocks, right? Let's say or I think mine's a little smaller, like 2 or 3, but the base is like you divide your day into sections. And then you kind of rank like, when do I feel like I'm the most energized, most alive? Okay. Then what period is kind of underneath that? Then what period is underneath that? And then what period of the day is like at my worst? So I feel like I get dumber as the day goes on. Okay. Right. So, certain things are done on certain days. But if I feel like, man, this requires me to be at my best mentally, right? Then it's like, okay, I'm going to do the things that require me to be at my best when I'm at my best. And for me, that means I've had my quiet time in the morning. It means I've had my, little check-in conversation with my wife. I'm feeling good about that. It means I've had my breakfast. It means I've gone to the gym. Now I feel like I'm at my best. And so if I were to do something like this at, first thing in the morning, then it's like, I don't know, I think my brain wouldn't be firing and things of that nature. So there are certain things that I do on certain days, and there are certain things that I do during certain times of the day, based on kind of that energy zone. And yeah.
Like your bell curve. It's like you're ramping up, you're the best in the middle, and then you're
exactly
coming down.
Exactly. And so even, I don't like meetings, but I have to have meetings. So I even schedule certain meetings like that. It's like, okay, this meeting doesn't require as much of me. So I'm going to put this meeting during this time of the day where, even if I'm not at my best, it doesn't adversely impact what we're doing. But yeah, I do that. There are certain days, like I'll take speaking commitments. If I take them, it's typically got to be on 1 or 2 days. And of course, there are exceptions, but that's the rhythm. It's not
Right.
I don't serve that serves me. And when that rhythm no longer serves me, I change it. I believe in quick pivots. I pivot quick. I don't believe in being loyal to a bad decision. So if it's not working for me anymore, I believe in decommitment. I'll decommit.
I think that's so important. I mean, those quick pivots, if someone is going down the wrong path, but they've spent so much time, so much energy, so much money on it, they feel so connected to it, like they can't let it go. How do you get good at pivoting quick? I mean, there was a quote, and I'm going to butcher it. It was like something about like the best people are the best at getting back up after a failure. Like it's just how fast you get up and move on versus kind of like dwelling on a problem or what happened, how'd you get there in the fall. It's like the faster you get up, or you're faster to fail, you're faster to get up and keep going.
Yeah. For me, I feel like that kind of came from mindset work. So for me, like any significant change, which let's say like one type of change we talk about in the culture space is phase changes. And this is, so it's like ice and water and liquid form are the same thing, but it takes certain conditions for the solid to go to liquid and the liquid to go to solid. So it's a phase change. It's a pretty significant change. And so in order for that to happen, right, it's mindset, it's skill set, and it's toolkit. And I think for me, the quick pivots just became a mindset issue, because the reason I think I wasn't pivoting quickly before is because of that perfectionism. And so it's something's not working, or you get off schedule or out of alignment. And then it was my tendency to go beat myself up, hate myself. You walk around, you suck as a person, that was kind of my leaning and my tendency. And it took mindset work. And I believe your mind is a mind field. And what's going to come out of it is going to be reflective of what you're allowing to be planted in it. And so when I say mindset work, what do I mean? I mean, number one, I changed what I was allowing to be planted in my mind. Like literally, that's literally what I did. I monitored what I was watching, how much of it did I watch? How did it make me feel? Did it make me more optimistic or pessimistic? Did it make me more full of faith or full of doubt, more positive or negative? And I just kind of became intentional about that. And it helped me it just helped me make quick pivots. It helped me reframe. And I'm not saying it's easy, but it's easier. And just helps me reframe. It's like, all right, listen, I can keep talking about how bad the first. So I'll give you an example. This morning, I kind of got off schedule a little bit. And so there are some things I wanted to spend some more time doing. And I'm literally walking out of the gym this morning, and I say to myself, it's like I formed a new habit, new pattern of thinking. I say to myself, okay, Now, am I going to let the whole day be a bad day because I had a bad morning? It's like, I've got control. I actually have control to realign the rest of my day. And like, that's what I did. And it was no strategy. It was just mindset work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is it about feeling like it's a bad day or a bad meal or a bad conversation or a bad meeting that literally gives us the excuse to say, forget it, throw in the towel. I'm not going to do any of my work. Let's order a pizza. Like it's amazing what like the sun coming up and the sun going down feels like the opening and the closing. And I realize it's like you can see it happening and you're experiencing the day, but what a powerful way to change your mindset, to know that you have the power to restart your day and decide when and how that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. It's liberating too. It just feels, it just feels so freeing to know that I am not at the mercy of a bad morning. Like, okay, I had a bad morning, but that does not mean that I have to have a bad day. I can pivot, and it's really liberating and freeing.
Yeah. I mean, in the food space, just because that's where I work in, and I'm thinking meal to meal with people, I always say, break your day into thirds. You have 3 days in a day. It's like, people are like, I want to be perfect. I want to eat perfectly for the whole day. I'm like, we don't run. We crawl, we walk, we run. You
Yeah.
get good at that first third for me for a week, 2 weeks, a month, 6 weeks. Show me that you feel confident in that first third, and then we'll get to the second third. And you're doing that with your mindset. You're doing that with how you show up. And like, that really comes down to self-awareness, the self-management that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And then thinking about how you just decided today's going to be a great day. I feel like we're having a great podcast. I feel like you're totally showing up and like inspiring me like no other, which means that like everyone who has you in their ears right now is probably feeling the same way. Like, you're rocking the second third of the day. So how do we, I mean, if you're reading me, like, let's take it to the next level. From emotional intelligence, you broke it down into those 4 categories.
Mm-hmm.
What is relational intelligence, and how do we assess our social, how we are socially?
100%. Okay, so here's kind of the signature. And here's the thing: like, I came up. I wrote a book on relational intelligence, and probably a couple years ago, right? And like, the definition of it has evolved a little bit for me. So this is the way
you're evolving and growing like you should. Don't stay stagnant.
Yeah. So for me, relational intelligence is this now. It is the ability to get I'm using Jim Collins, right people on the right bus imagery here, but the ability to get the right people in your life in the right way. I mean, in the right place in your life, so that you can make the right investment in their lives, so that you can get the right return in yours. So right people in the right place, so that you're making the right investments, so that you're getting the right return. So let me tell you what I mean by that. All right. So I believe, and this is something that this is what got me interested in this. Okay. What got me interested in this is, I don't know what happened, but it's just like some point in my life, this is several years ago, I had this epiphany. I saw it professionally in my work with serving people, and I saw it in my own life. It hit me one day, and I said, you know what? It looks like people's greatest joy and greatest pain is coming from this same place: relationships. Like, there, unfortunately, in part of my line of work, I'm with people during end of life situations. Mm-hmm. Well, this is what I've never seen. I've never seen someone who's passing away. If you've ever been around, I want you to think about this. They rarely ask, I'm going to say never, they rarely ask for things. They always ask for people. Mm-hmm. Always. And so it hit me personally. I said, man, I don't want to get to the end of my life and feel like the people that mean the most to me got the least from me. How can I live my life in a way where if I pass away, if I'm passing away or someone else is passing away that I love deeply and dearly, that the only thing I have to deal with is grief and not regret. Like grief is hard enough. I don't want to compound that with regret. And so that was kind of like my motivation. It's this idea that, okay, there might be people that have a place in my life, but everyone doesn't have the same place. And I'm going to be okay with that, right? Like my wife's going to occupy a place that is going to be different than my clients and, and my kids and my friends and, my extended family, but like some people in the extended family might have a different place than others in the extended family. So it's like being free of the thought that, okay, to treat everybody right, it means you got to treat them the same. And being unapologetic about that. And so when you got the right people in the right place, you're able to make the right investments so that the people that mean the most to you don't get the least from you. And then you get the right return, which is, something that's priceless. There's a degree of fulfillment and joy that comes from relationships that you can get from no other place. Listen, you can be I've been to so many bad resorts, but I had great friends with me and we still had a good time. So that's kind of really what it's all about.
You make such a good point. And even just looking back at your core values of having your friends on there and like having a space and a time on your calendar for them, because not only are you declaring that that is important to you, you're finding a time on your calendar for it, and then taking it all the way through to that relational intelligence, knowing like I have a time on my calendar for these people that I care so deeply for, and they're going to know, and I'm going to show up for them and tell them how I feel about them. And they're never going to question that because I have this space on my calendar in it. And now I have the space in my life for them, a space to have this relational experience and to get that return. You're making me want to schedule like a girls' night or something. Really, like truly, because it's we can say all we want about who we are and how we show up in our life and that the people we care about know it. But what are we taking with us at the end? Like,
yeah,
nothing. Like people are going to know you cared about them and showed up for them and were there for them and love them if and when you make the space for that.
Yeah. Can I share one other thing I was thinking about? And this is what this is what got me to. And I'm good now, but sometimes when I talk about this, it makes me emotional. I remember I include this when I'm serving people in coaching, but a counselor made me do this in 2014 when I had that anxiety attack. Mm-hmm. We go in for the first session, right? And we have a conversation. At the end of it, he gives me homework. Mm-hmm. And the homework is an obituary exercise. And I had to write, what would I want people to say about me at my funeral? Game changer. It was a game changer for me, because what was like the majority of what I wanted people to write was basically about how I showed up in their life. Yeah. Like those were the things, like I wanted my kids not to talk about what I gave them, but who I was to them. I wanted my wife I wanted like my friends. So that was a game changer for me. And it was it was such a tough exercise. It's so tough to do that. You got to be emotionally ready to do that, but it was revolutionary for me.
Yeah. I can imagine that you're especially as an achiever and a driver like you are, to almost like kick the can. I feel like this is probably something I do where I'm like, when I get through this project, when I get through this book draft, when I get through this, I will do a special play date with my son, or I'll have this special trip with my friends. Or like I said, I'm going to schedule a girls' night. Like, it takes intention. It takes practice. It takes like people to help support you to really stay clear on those values and to have the self-management to make it happen, because that's the only way people are going to say what you want them to say at your funeral or in that obituary. It's yeah. Wow. I have homework. I have homework after this for sure. It's
Yeah. And you know
hard.
what? I think not, I think there's so much to be learned. I've actually got a, was having a conversation with I was speaking at this entrepreneurs event not too long ago. And there was a guy, I was walking into the venue and a guy stopped me. He said, "Hey, we just bought your book for our entire mastermind." And, it was a group of entrepreneurs. And I really wrote the book for people to apply it in their personal lives because that's where I saw a lot of the pain. Um, but when I started thinking about the great resignation and how so many people are like, I don't think people are anti work. I think people are anti toxic and unhealthy environments. I think people are anti underappreciation. I think people are anti unfulfillment. I don't think people are anti work. And the point that I'm making with that is I feel like this idea of relational intelligence is not just like a personal family friends kind of concept. I think it's like a cultural concept. I think it's important to get better with people, period. And whether you are an entrepreneur and you want to see your bottom line affected, everything in business is people. Everything. Your team is people, your customers are people, the investors are people, the bank is not a bank, the bank is people, there are people making those decisions. Everything is people. So I just feel like it's really something that's super important. I'm just trying to do my best to scream to the top of my lungs about this. Like, hey, getting good at people is going to help you get better at everything.
Definitely. I mean, not everyone has the flexibility to have a rhythm like you do as an entrepreneur to
Yeah.
say like, what's my rhythm? And I got to get to the gym to show up the best. But I just think about, I mean, it is no life to live to be stuck in a cubicle, forced to work hours in low energy blocks. Like that bell curve we were talking about, like to think like there are people just wasting their life and wasting hours of the day feeling unfulfilled where they could get a workout in, show back up at that cubicle, work twice as efficient, feel more inspired, have better blood flow, like be pumped up and produce better.
Yeah.
And then that energy is coming into that environment and that positive energy is being exchanged with their coworkers and there's more camaraderie. And yeah, I know it's that's something I think about here in my business. I mean, I have a very small team, but culture is so important, and having people have their personal priorities be a part of the conversation is so key.
Mm, mm, yeah, I agree 1000% there. Super important.
Wow, Darius, I feel like I have learned so much on today's podcast. I can't wait to even dive deeper. I'm going to start with homework, which is core values, self-management, and then making sure that the people that I care about have a place on my calendar. So that I have the time set aside to show up for them, and so that they know how I feel.
Yeah, that's amazing. You got to schedule the girls' night.
I know. I know. I know. It's probably like I'm that girl who's like, who wants to go? I'm like, go on a workout or a bike ride or whatever. But there's got to be one of those in the bunch, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. 100%.
Oh my goodness. Well, Darius, I would love to know where people can follow along, where they can get your book. Where I mean, I went down the YouTube rabbit hole, so I will definitely put those in the show notes. But where can people learn more?
Yep. I would direct people primarily to DariusDaniels.com because that's going to be, I think, the funnel that will guide them to kind of whatever part of Darius that they feel like they want to glean from. Like one of the things I've learned is that, hey, there are different parts to all of us, and everyone doesn't want all of you. So, but there are parts of you that can add value to them. And so we're kind of creating a hub there where whatever part of Darius, wherever I can add value to your life, you're able to find it there or be pointed in the right direction there. So that's where I would direct everybody.
Oh, you've already added so much value to mine. So thank you so much for being here. I will put all your links in the show notes so people can follow along. And I'll share a clip from today's podcast so people can get just like a glimmer at what an amazing, vibrant light you are.
Thanks so much. My honor to be here.
Thank you.